inside the office. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Can anybody hear me? Say yes if you can hear me. So, welcome to the InsurTech Symposium. Fantastic to have so many of you here. This organization just came together when a few of us were talking about all the fantastic events happening in London, especially the ones organized by the Accelerator run by Startup Bootcamp. And we decided to try to get some people together also from the academic sphere, some students interested in InsurTech, startup founders, as well as people from the industry. And that became this event. We were hoping to get maybe 5 people interested in InsurTech because such a niche field, which is great to see so many of them today. And we have a fantastic list of speakers. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Eric. I'm an MBA student here at Oxford. I'm also the founder of Digital Findprint. That's going live this year. Just a few practical aspects of today's topic. The Wi-Fi, if anybody needs to get connected, is the SBS_conf. You just need to connect to it. There's no password needed. Fire exits. Everybody working in insurance knows that's extremely important. There's one at the end of the room, 2 out to the courtyard. In the event of a fire, please remain calm and walk home. The restrooms for gentlemen is at the end of the room this way. For ladies, walk through this door and follow to the end of the corridor. It's on the left-hand side. If anybody needs to store any luggage, we do have a storage room that is locked and under surveillance. So if you want to leave something, ask in the reception for the luggage key, and they'll bring it to you on the left-hand side. Finally, I used to work for Twitter before coming in for my MBA, so we will start every presentation the following way. If I could ask everybody to bring out your cell phones, and I want you to turn on the sound, and turn on all your notifications, and then go into Twitter and make sure you tweet with the hashtag Oxford InsurTech 2016, hashtag InsurTech. Let's see if we can make that trend here in the UK today. Actually, the algorithm for trending is a bit stupid, so if you get enough people to tweet under a period of 2 minutes, you can actually make it trend even if you just have 20 or 30 tweets. This one's happening very quickly. So, see if we can make that happen today. The agenda should be in your booklets on the day. We're super excited to have Kesha Kirkland from PwC, Matthew Jones from Smith Ray, many other fantastic speakers happening. The one academic speaker, Professor Nir Volkan, is running late. So we might have to start with Kesha and Nir a bit later. I'm sure he's using the academic quarter as an excuse to be running late today. Before we kick off with the entire agenda, I just want to give 3 quick reasons for why personally I'm very excited about insurance tech. And the first one has to do with what we learn in economics. All the graphs that I've been seeing around economics try to show this kind of development, where as a least developed economy, insurance is not a very big industry. It then increases as countries go through development, and eventually, in very developed countries like the UK and the US, it's a big portion of the industry. We always see that as an A to B, as in when countries develop, insurance develops. But what if it's the opposite? What if you need insurance in order to develop an economy? And there's some interesting research coming out from Stanford to point to that is the case. The chicken comes before the egg. Because if you have a strong insurance industry, farmers can grow their crops in the peace and quiet knowing that they will be protected. You can have a functioning financial system. You can do so many more things which you cannot do unless the insurance industry is working. So even though we're all insurance professionals in the room, it might not feel like you're changing the world every day. You actually are. But without knowing about it, you might take that for granted. So getting the insurance industry to work and work better ways using digital technologies is extremely important. The second reason is that there are so many simple things you can do when it comes to technology that hasn't been applied to insurance yet. Working at Twitter, we do a lot of benchmarking together with Snapchat on mobile video. You might have seen in the news yesterday that Facebook thinks they're going to be 100% mobile just by 2020. And what happens then is that you need to create other ways of absorbing the mobile content when it comes to video. So we would do benchmarking on click-through rates. So if you get one of these irritating mobile advertisements in the form of video, they normally show up in a horizontal format. So if you're looking through your Facebook feed, you then have to turn your phone in order to see the entire video. If you have a video shot in that way, the average click-through rate when we measured it was about 2%. So out of 100 people seeing that kind of video, only 2 people would actually click on the advertisement. And whether that's for insurance or another product, it stayed about the same at 2%. Can anybody guess what happens if you film the commercial in the vertical format instead? 7%. 7? So 4x increase is very high. 7%. Any other guesses? 90? Almost. It increases 9 times. It goes up to 18%. So 1 in 5 people are clicking on the ad. I keep asking the question to everybody in insurance I've ever met with. Has anybody seen an insurance commercial filmed in vertical format yet? Not a single one. So despite the fact that mobile advertising is now outspending desktop advertising, and despite the fact that video on mobile is becoming the new standard for seeing video, nobody has tried it, even though statistically it can increase a lot. On this specific one, I read it from, I think, 30,000 Twitter users and another 20,000 Snapchat users. It was a study that came out around the same time. I can send you the link if you're interested where we published it, because this became public knowledge. So even this is not any secret things. It's been in the public domain for 2 years, but it still hasn't been absorbed by the industry. And there are so much other low-hanging fruits out there. Any other questions around that specific? The final reason why InsurTech is important is that it's growing faster than any industry in the world. FinTech has been booming and somewhat busting, and it's been happening over the past 5 to 10 years. But InsurTech is so new that so far nobody has been noticing it. In the first quarter of 2015, the total amount of VC investments in InsurTech, as measured by AngelList, was 160 million. And at that time, a lot of people were saying that it's a bubble, it's too much, it can't be sustainable, too many things are happening at once, and FinTech, along with InsurTech, is bound to decrease. We're now in the middle of 2016, and I'm sure that Kasia would know what the number is for the first quarter of 2016. $650 million. And we didn't talk about this, but you're absolutely right. Round of applause for Kasia. So that's a 4-fold increase, going from what we would call the top of a bubble to a 4-fold increase in 1 year is nothing short of outstanding. And that's because of the great startups that people like you are running out in the world and investments that are happening. And it's just bound to increase. It's going to be happening much faster. And Kasia will talk a bit more about that at a later stage. Those are the 3 reasons I am very passionate about InsurTech and very excited about the quick developments that are happening in this field. And that's why we want to get people together today from the startups, from the academia, from the industry as well, to meet, greet, and make sure that we can build some amazing things together. So thank you so much all for coming. We're going to get started a bit early by getting Kasia to speak about her thought leadership that's been done. Then we'll switch over to Professor Volkan. But before that, any questions about today? Any comments so far? And we'll hand over to Kasia Kirkland.
So I'm Kasia Kirkland, and I am a management consultant at PwC, particularly focusing on digital practice. But for the last 6 months, I've been on secondment to Startup Bootcamp InsurTech, which, for those of you who don't know, is an accelerator program designed to accelerate insurance technology startups for a period of 3 months. I won't go into too much detail because you'll be hearing from the COO later about the good work we do there. But today, what I want to talk to you about was kind of the InsurTech landscape, so building what we just heard, but also some trends that I've seen in the market. PwC and Startup Bootcamp have quite a unique position in the InsurTech ecosystem. So we sit in between investors, startups, and big insurers, and help to facilitate partnerships and all of those different players to achieve their goals. So it's from that sort of middleman perspective that I'm talking today. For the last month, I've been focusing on writing a trend report based on what we've seen in the last 6 months and the year in InsurTech. So I'll be sharing with you some of my insights from that today. So feel free to ask any questions as we go through. I just wanted to start with this quote. I think it really adequately sums up what we're really seeing in insurance. Typically, it's an industry that's very behind other industries in terms of disruption and innovation, but that is starting to change. I think some of this stalling has been due to a complex regulatory landscape, high barriers to entry, and some complacency in the industry. But that is now changing. So similar to what we saw, but as you can see from this graph, we've lost the values, but never mind. The red line shows the number of investments that have happened in InsurTech over the last 5 years. So there's been a 5-fold increase in the number of investments in 5 years. And the value of those investments in 2015 was 2.7 billion. Which is pretty impressive when you can see those growth rates. And as we just heard, in 2016, in the first quarter, we had the highest number of transactions. So it was 45 transactions accumulating to $650 million. But what is interesting is that in the same period last year, there were only that's double. Getting my next stats confused. But what is also interesting is when you think about where does that investment come from? Traditionally, you would expect it to come from traditional venture capital firms who are looking for a return on investment. But increasingly, we're seeing that much of this investment comes from corporate venture capital businesses. So big insurers looking to invest and making sort of strategic decisions around that. This year alone, in that first quarter, of the 45 deals, 20 came from corporate insurers. So this is certainly an area that's attracting investment from corporates. But not all corporates are responding. So PwC certainly see that different insurers take different approaches to engaging in InsurTech. Broadly speaking, there are sort of 4: acquisition, internal innovation, partnering, and then your own venture capital arm. But actually, I think what we're seeing a lot of is still some insurers are doing nothing. I think Jens is going to talk to you a bit more about different collaboration approaches and things, so I won't go into too much detail.
Is the trend the same in different countries?
So I haven't drilled down to the data from a sort of country by country. This is global figures. So if you look at, for example, I have access to CV Insights. If you try to look at it by country, it's kind of patchy. But certainly applications to Startup Bootcamp largely came from the UK and the rest of Europe.
Would you hazard a guess of that 2.7 billion? How much of that would you say was US?
50, maybe more. I thought this is quite a nice, neat little graph. It's taken from Google Trends. It shows people searching for the term InsurTech. And as you can see, the spike since the end of last year has been quite dramatic. So really, we talk about this explosion of InsurTech. We've had different opinions on that, but certainly it's in the last year that this has really started to evolve. But what is interesting is when you compare that to FinTech, which is almost sort of the big brother to InsurTech. What was a huge spike at the end, the blue line, looks awfully flat. So this kind of puts it into context in that the level of investment and the duration is much smaller, but it shouldn't be overlooked. It's certainly growing. And this sort of just further ratifies that. So if we say that in InsurTech, as I said, roughly 2.7 billion investment last year compared to FinTech, sort of almost 20 billion. So it is much smaller. So as I said, I've been focusing on writing this sort of trends paper. And today I just wanted to share with you a few sort of high-level findings and observations. And then I'm going to talk you through 6 key trends that we've been focusing on at PwC. That's how we tend to categorize with startups. So just sort of high-level observations. The first one is that the majority of InsurTech startups this year are focused on customer-facing parts of the value chain, so distribution and sales. This isn't that surprising. InsurTech is obviously in its infancy, so you would expect to see startups going for almost the low-hanging fruit, the things you can get your head around, and often, as is the case, the startup themselves might have had their own personal experience, probably a negative one, dealing with an insurer and doing something about it. So that's where we see the highest volume at the moment, but as time goes on, we would expect to see more in the back office. The second observation is that when you look at what insurers are looking for and where they think the most impact will come, it tends to be from brand new offerings, so some kind of product that's not on the market already, as well as where startups are finding new forms of data or previously untapped forms of data. to improve the underwriting process. And I'll speak about that in more detail later on. The third point was around a lot of people ask, are startups friend or foe to insurers? And certainly my opinion is at the moment they're certainly more friend. They could be seen as enablers, they are complementary to an insurer's offering and could kind of be added on. They're not necessarily taking market share or will be kind of taking customers away from the insurer. So yeah, I see the trend. Number 4 is, interestingly, if we look at the percentage of startups that are leveraging what you might term as an emerging technology. So these are the kind of sexy ones that get all the press, like blockchain, AI, that sort of thing. Of the applications to Startup Bootcamp, only 40% were leveraging such a technology. The other 60% are using more established technologies such as cloud computing or mobile. But what makes them actually truly distinctive and given the potential to be disruptive is what they're doing with their business model. So they'll have an innovative business model, a strong customer value proposition. So, you don't have to be using some jazzy technology to be really making an impact in the industry. And the last one is his point around collaboration. So from where we're sitting in the ecosystem, we certainly see that there's a lot of value to be gained for insurers and startups if they collaborate and join together. They each have their own relative strengths, and by sort of coming together and playing to those strengths, there's a kind of more required to be one project. Any questions on that? So for my report, I've been using 2 different data sets to look at 2 perspectives in the industry. The first is the entrepreneurial view. So for that, I've been looking at the applications to Startup Bootcamp. And the other is the kind of executive industry view, so looking at incumbents. And PwC recently ran a survey, the Global FinTech Survey, where they interviewed C-suite executives in the insurance industry as well as broader FinTech to understand their views. And what I've done is that we found 6 key trends, and I'll talk you through each one, and we've managed to map the percentage of startups that we see impacting that trend, as well as asking the insurers, how impactful do you see this trend to be? And it makes for some interesting comparisons. So this first trend is around enhancing interactions and building trusted relationships. So these are startups who are improving the customer experience. A recent survey showed that the insurance industry has the lowest customer experience scores. So it's not surprising that in InsurTech startups are focusing on this sort of quick win. Typically, in outside of the industry as well, customers' expectations are being set by very forward-thinking industries and companies like Google, Amazon, and people now expect the same experience from their insurer. Now, insurers aren't really very well equipped to do this at the moment, but what the InsurTech startups can come and do is, without the legacy systems that are impeding big insurers, they can design a much more compelling experience. And we're seeing kind of a number of trends in this area, omni-channel engagement, things like improved aggregation, and to name a few startups. So we've got Symposium, one of the co-founders in the room. They are an automated chatbot, which make buying insurance much, much easier. It's almost like you buy insurance via WhatsApp. It's very appealing to millennials, and the conversion rates are actually much higher. Another good example is Insurify, so you can get a quote for your car insurance by just taking a picture of your number plates. Another good example, on your mobile you can bring together all of your different policies. They'll tell you when one's about to run out. They'll also tell you where you're overinsured, so you're paying too much or paying twice, and where you're underinsured and you're exposed to risk. All these are really good examples of startups who are not only improving access and the ease that someone can buy insurance, but actually the engagement with the insurer. So you're starting to see longer term, stronger relationships. It's interesting to see that this is where we saw the most number of applications, but typically it was, of the 6 trends, the 4th most impactful. So they're not considered that impactful by the insurer, which is surprising because a lot of these are as a service solutions, so could be easily plugged into an insurer and offer a kind of a better distribution platform and access to new customers. So yeah, there is that mismatch. But moving forward, we anticipate this will still remain to be a popular trend, but some of the other trends will gain popularity. The second trend we saw, this was considered to be the most impactful by insurance companies, are InsurTechs who are meeting changing customer needs with new offerings. So bringing something completely new to the market. One such trend is microinsurance, so providing low-cost insurance to low-income families, typically in the developing world. A fantastic example of being Afia, who they offer low-cost healthcare for short-term, anything from a day to 3 months, to people across Tanzania. And this is typically a very underserved population, so large insurers haven't been attracted to go and provide insurance care because the cost is far too high. So there aren't, it's not feasible in terms of terms. But what Bima Afia have been able to do is monopolise on the fact that mobile penetration is very high. Simple handsets, and most of Tanzania actually have those. So by administering the policy by a mobile, claiming by the mobile, it actually brings down administration costs and makes it profitable. And I think this is a kind of really nice example of how InsurTechs are actually a force for good. So they're helping serve an underserved population, bringing some transparency, and really making a difference to people who have been otherwise marginalised. And you can kind of apply that idea of InsurTech as a force for good to a lot of the themes where the startups are bringing in more transparency and trust to an industry that really is seen it to be very untrustworthy and some might argue kind of has lost some of its integrity. So I do think this is a fantastic example of bringing more benefit. Another good example that gets a lot of kind of common interest is peer-to-peer insurance. So individuals pooling their risk and supporting one another. Again, this brings greater transparency and is a completely new business model. Lemonade, a good example, they just raised $13 million in their seed round. But by no means is this an easy entry point. It's kind of doing full stack. So this is, I guess, why insurers are nervous about this, because startups are coming in and could take away some of their customers. So this is, I'd say, one of the more kind of exciting trends. The third one is looks at startups who are looking beyond just insurance and are building strategic partnerships into other industries. We only saw, I think, 3% of applications in this area. And insurers also don't really recognise this as being a particularly impactful trend. And I think this is one that we'll see much more of in a few years to come, because typically the startups who are doing this are slightly later stage. They've already validated their product in insurance and now finding use cases beyond that. So a good example would be Domots. Domots have created almost a black box for your home, so connected monitoring device so that when you're at the house you can change your heating, you'll be alerted if your pipe bursts and that sort of thing. And what they're being clever about is finding links to other industries. So there's obviously a value for an insurer to that proposition, but also you can use utility companies, telecoms as new distribution channels. So those kinds of partnerships are mutually beneficial in that for an insurer, for example, they can offer their customers a service like this, which it's changing the model away from we'll be there for you when your house floods to we'll be there to stop your house from flooding. That's very valuable and builds much more trusted and long-term relationships with their customers. So I think this could be a very disruptive trend, but I think it's more medium to long term. The next three trends are sort of internal workings of an insurer. So this first one is around InsurTech startups who are improving operational capabilities. So they're kind of looking at the back office and making things more efficient and much cheaper for an insurer. We saw this was the second highest number of applications to this area, but not considered to be that impactful by insurers. And examples that we're seeing, for example, Kobe Analytics, they were part of Startup Bootcamp cohort. They're making compliance and regulation simple and more automated. Right-in-Dem are improving the claims process, making it more streamlined and transparent for customers. and as a result helping insurers to reduce churn. That's typically the part in the customer journey where you lose those customers as after a claim. So they're helping to improve those statistics. I think we saw more than I would have thought in terms of applications to this area. Typically, it's an area that has high barriers to entry because building a solution that you can integrate would have typically in the past been very costly, but now thanks to cloud computing, you can build solutions that are cheaper to implement and lower ongoing costs, and that's certainly what these guys are doing. But what is interesting is that the existing barrier to entry is around having an insurance background and knowledge. Both Kobe and Analytics and Writing are industry experts. So Writing, for example, one of the co-founders has his own claims management business. So I think we will see more startups in this area, but they'll typically be the ones who come from insurance and found a niche part in the value chain where they think there are some benefits to be gained. So yeah, I think this could be another growth area. The fifth one, this one's kind of again a bit more sexy in terms of it's using some interesting technology. But these are startups who are tapping into new or previously untapped sources of data to generate risk insight, which is of value to an insurer. You hear a lot about Internet of Things, and I think that's going to be a huge growth area, but its application to things like connected health. So FitSense, for example, are a startup who take data from Fitbits or other wearables. They are able to generate value from a lot of noisy data, and they come up with one activity score. And the idea is that with that activity score, you as a consumer should be able to receive more personalized insurance products at a lower premium if you are proving that you are active, fit and healthy. That is, very appealing to for an individual and for an insurer. You want to be providing these kinds of compelling offers. So it's interesting to see a lot of startups who are able to tap into these new sources of data. Another good one is Cytora. So Cytora they sort of mine and get value out of open source data. So things like social media feeds and news feeds, and in real time they're able to identify things like fires or social unrest, and therefore act in a preventative way in real time. I'd say a kind of a stumbling block we're seeing here, though, is that whilst insurers, this is seen as the second most impactful trend, whilst they're really excited about all these new forms of data that they can add into their underwriting process, they don't really know what to do with it. I saw a number of the startups who actually, they've got something really, really compelling, and insurers are excited, but they don't know how to integrate this new data into their underwriting processes, which are typically potentially quite archaic and inflexible. So I think it's going to take a few years for insurers to really be able to leverage this data. The last one are startups who are actually taking new approaches to underwriting. This was where we released a number of applications, which isn't very surprising because this is typically where an insurer would have a competitive advantage in that they have a lot of historical data and actuarial expertise. So it's difficult for a startup, particularly at this early stage in sort of the InsurTech life cycle, to be going for this. There are a few examples, and I think we will see more going forward. But typically, I think those that will succeed, it will require partnering between a startup and an insurer. So the startup might bring the data, and the insurer will bring underwriting expertise.
It's getting an issue.
Yeah.
Very sorry about that. Questions, 3 more slides of material, and then do some Q&A because I want to get every information that we can from this thought leader in the industry. Professor Volkan only has 10 minutes, so this is a quick one, but that's Professor Volkan,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I'm really sorry about this. I just really wanted to welcome you also. I'm one of the things that we are like to run the presentation, and this happens to be the last day of the term and the last day of the academic year. So that's why one of my colleagues and I will be running around like headless chickens. So it couldn't be the worst day for us, but that shouldn't obviously impact you. It's just really apologizing for why the dean couldn't come and why more of us faculty couldn't come. But We really appreciate that. We really appreciate you organizing this conference, the conference. I personally and a lot of us think this is a fantastic area. Just to pick on your last point, Cassie, this trend 5, what we call trend 5. So in economy, that's the obvious thing. I mean, the problem with insurance is asymmetric information, is the fact that people know about their health and risk profile and so on, and the insurance doesn't. And a lot of the efficiency come from that asymmetric information. Your mobile phone knows everything about you. It knows everything about you. And you probably know more than that. There's lots of startups. There's two groups in Cambridge that use all the sensor information. They use it for all kinds of health purposes, to send messages to help people stop smoking, to help people with mental health issues. But what's striking about that is how much they know. They know when you're moving, why you're moving, are you running, are you doing so much of that stuff. They know they can assist your mood, they can assist your actions with very high accuracy. So that gives fantastic opportunities, I think, in particular to the insurance industry. So this is clearly the right time. So I think it's a very good time for you guys, for entrepreneurs in this space. Of course, the fact that it's a good time and the right time doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And you have mentioned the legacy systems, but also a lot of issues going to be what kind of data people will be allowed. This is an area where the regulators are interested, the government are interested, everybody is paying attention. Yeah, now people now realize that your mobile phone knows everything about you, that Facebook knows everything about you. Signing up with Facebook gives a huge amount of information about you. And so there's a lot of interest around these things, and a lot of hurdles for startups. But I think it's a fascinating area, and I will let you continue. And apologize again for the delay, but I hope that you will enjoy today and network and learn. And I wish I could spend more time. Thank you. Thank
you. So I just wanted to finish up with a few challenges facing industry opportunities. And just to pick up on that point, regulation is a huge one. It's not a new challenge that the industry faces. And certainly some of the FCA are doing their best to try not to impede innovation. But as ever, the regulators typically behind innovation and is playing catch up. But they have things and initiatives like the sandbox to help startups in that area. New regulation coming in 2018, GDPR, offers a huge challenge to insurers and startups alike. But I would say that actually there's a great opportunity again here for collaboration, in that the insurer often will probably have a good relationship with the regulator, at least a good working relationship, and a deep understanding of the regulation. And the startup can come in and help meet customer needs. So together they can meet the needs of both the customer and the regulator. The second challenge, and this is again an existing one, is insurance's perception as being pale, male, and stale. So a survey by PwC said that 64% of women said that their insurer isn't doing enough to increase diversity. And I think it was a further look, 14% of women said they would be put off from joining insurance because of its perception and its almost sort of branding. This isn't a problem that insurers themselves face. It's also, you see it among startups. So there are very few female founders in InsurTech startups. And I think this is a real shame, because a diverse workforce encourages diversity of thought and helps you address more customer needs and better serve the customer. And also raises this idea of insurance is integrity. So I think there's definitely opportunity to try and encourage more women in the industry. Lastly, the idea of margin pressures. So 73% of insurance said that this is where they thought the greatest threats came from InsurTech startups. And actually, whilst at the moment most startups will be focusing on one part of the value chain, be it perhaps claims or distribution, moving forward I would anticipate that startups will start to focus on several parts of the value chain. And actually insurers are therefore at risk of being reduced to just pure risk carriers. So whether or not that happens, we'll see. But in terms of opportunities for the future, there are hundreds, and as I was saying, I guess each of those trends Those 6 trends I went through are potential growth areas, but a few that I haven't touched upon. Blockchain, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with it, and I wouldn't even try and explain what it is, but Google that one. This is gets a lot of buzz across fintech more broadly as well, and it has the potential to be very disruptive. In InsurTech, this is probably quite a long way off. We are seeing some emerging use cases in things like claims automation, the sharing economy, but I think it'll be interesting for insurers to use their expertise to try and explore new use cases or understand the viability of ones that have already been developed. Robotics, so I think we'll see a huge ramp up in robotics and automation of all processes, and that will lead to huge efficiency gains. And then finally, sector diversity, so looking at the applications to Startup Bootcamp, the majority of startups focusing on personal lines, but certainly there's a lot of opportunity for that to go to life and pensions or commercial lines. But as I said before, it's not surprisingly one almost the low hanging fruit. And that was all I wanted to cover. Does anyone have any questions?
In the line of the insurance to reduce risk barriers, I mean, I've worked like 6 years in emerging markets. So what we have seen a trend is towards assurance instead of insurance. So from the insurance companies, we are selling more assurance than insurance. Yeah. So now looking at the trend, we are like building up the products in a way where we are having a risk component, which is like basic, and then you have like huge products or a whole life insurance where we give an assurance to the company. So in a way, if the fintech space or startups are coming in, so they can segregate the risk as well as all those benefits around it. So it is a major risk in a way because most of the volume or the money which insurance companies are making is from assurance product, not insurance. It's like just hardly we are like the term insurance we are not selling that much. It's more in migrate to the assurance products.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the insurers are at risk of kind of just being whittled down to their kind of core expertise and actually losing the kind of relationship with the customer.
I wonder if you could give any examples of where startups are addressing the integrity issue. That's a public concern about the traditional players. How is fintech or InsurTech addressing it?
Yeah, well, I'd say a trend such as peer-to-peer insurance is a good example. It's actually an age-old concept. It's probably where insurance started, but the idea of a group of individuals coming together, pooling their premiums, and then if one of them needs to make a claim, they use that pool of money to meet that and support one another. And then the idea is at the end of the year, any money that's left over is either distributed back to them or lowered premiums for next year. But what that does is, from a kind of human psychological point of view, if you're part of a small pool of risk and maybe you might know individuals or share something in common, be it we see this kind of pet insurance. So pet insurance for pugs, for example, you have an affinity to the other individuals that you pooled your risk with, so you're much less likely to make a fraudulent claim. You kind of understand where your money is going, and it just brings that sort of element of trust and integrity back. So I think the second trend I talked about, which is serving particularly people who have been underserved, bringing down the prices for people who couldn't previously afford it. Those are kind of good examples, I'd say. I don't know if anyone else has any examples to add to that.
Just curious to look at regulations further, like I heard there is an initiative about open data in banking sectors that encourage banking institutions to look at data, share all the factors. Is this trend happening in the trend sectors as well?
So I think the regulator, for example, as I said, have this sandbox where you can go and essentially sort of play with their data. I know that, Albert, I don't want to pick on you, but you've interacted with the regulator about potentially joining the sandbox.
The innovation.
Yeah, the innovation hub. But that didn't go anywhere, is that right?
Not really, because it's another stuff. But so I mean, the way they work is that they're really focused on very new insurance business models. And given that our company is not proposing something like new, they were fine with it and they say, well, you don't need us.
Yeah.
But They have been supporting along the way, so in order to answer us to some legal queries and giving us support in understand everything.
Yeah. But also, when startups are looking to run a pilot, for example, with a big insurer, the idea would be to use some of the insurer's data. And from what I've heard, that can be also quite problematic. So, especially if the startup, if their sort of business model is built on a cloud-based solution, insurers often say, "No way, it's my data going in the cloud." So, I think it's definitely a stumbling block they're facing. I think it's one that can't be overcome,
But to pick up on that, there is an interesting fact in the European Union. There are a lot of initiatives related to open data sets. One of the last ones has been the forcing banks to open their APIs. And actually, this is very interesting because I spent before founding my startup, I spent my last 2 years working on a project, part of Deloitte, was building artificial intelligence for insurance companies. And we built it completely based on open data. So there are countries where there is enough open data to build a new thing that doesn't need any historical data sets.
So who are we getting data from?
Lots of different sources, but mainly open data sets. For example, just to give you an example, the police force in the UK, they have an amazing detailed data set on crashes. To price motor insurance, you don't need historical claims. That's a good open.
Peer-to-peer insurance. Is anybody doing anything in that space? I'm really struggling to understand.
Yeah. There's also French insurance and Lemonade. So this is in my report, so you can read it there. But I think Barry was saying that they've got 20% growth rates, but quite a lot is written about peer-to-peer, and that it's quite, for a customer, it's quite hard to get your head around. So it's not necessarily, to some it wouldn't be that attractive, but also you're doing the full insurance stack and you're underwriting. So I think it's Guevara are trying to expand internationally, but for the last 5 years they're still, they don't have any profits yet. So it's a quite hard one to tackle because it's a whole business model.
Is it real peer-to-peer, or is it? It's a risk transfer. So, are they regulated as an insurance company?
I believe so. I think they're GA, they have the capital providers on the back, and the reinsurance agreement with the.
So they've got reinsurance and capital backing.
Yeah. That's my understanding.
Okay, which doesn't sound like peer-to-peer.
I mean, somebody has to.
It sounds like peer-to-peer marketing.
Yeah.
As opposed to the actual insurance risk.
Are there any examples of insurance firms offering a platform for startups to plug into? If the regulation is an issue that you can't use Amazon Web Services, are they providing a verified, assured platform to index?
So off the top of my head, I can't think on doing specifically that, but we do see the trend around the kind of operational capabilities. We did see a lot of applications of startups who are building some form of enabling platform. But I haven't heard of them doing that, so maybe that's your ticket.
Aviva with its Garner control interesting.
Okay.
Normal.
Yeah.
So I've noticed the stats in terms of the growth in terms of investment into InsurTech over the last several years. Clearly, it lags behind fintech. What I'm kind of interested in is that you see the insights of the example of investment. What's the relative proportion in terms of US traditional Californian type startups versus UK or Europe, if you like?
So we just had that question. So I'm looking at my pie chart in my report, and together UK and applications from the UK and the rest of Europe to the startup accelerator, startup bootcamp, was over 50% combined. But it is a London-based accelerator, so you would anticipate something like that. which is why places like Startup Bootcamp are looking to start accelerators in other countries, so over in California or Tel Aviv, for example. I can't give you any statistics with confidence on the US, but certainly in terms of, for example, health InsurTech startups, which is where a lot of the big spikes often come from those. That's mainly a US focused trend, and actually that's sort of coming down a bit now. So it used to be most of the funding was going into health-based InsurTech startups, but we're seeing that sort of come down a bit. So it will be, I'll share the link with you, but it will be, it's one of the downloadable from
I have to ask one question while we have you here. I'm just familiar with Truck. It's a US-based, Truck is a US-based InsurTech startup that simply enables you to take a photo of an object and then get insurance for whatever you took a photo of. So you take a photo of your dog and then suddenly get pet insurance, take a photo of your laptop, get death insurance. And what they noticed when they launched it was that people were starting to send out selfies. So they wanted life insurance. But needless to say, they're not regulated as life insurance. So my question to you is, when can we start buying life insurance with a selfie? How long is it going to take?
5 years.
5 years? And what's going to be that? Is that because of regulation or insurance system?
I haven't had any thought into that. Well, I think life insurance will typically be a bit slow, but you are seeing startups who are able to almost auto-filling, but auto-filling forms of things. So maybe it's actually not that hard. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question before I let you go. What has surprised you the most from the research that you've done? What is the biggest innovation that you've seen?
I personally was surprised to see that it's not necessarily all about the technology, particularly because you think InsurTech, it's got tech in the name. So I was surprised to see that actually that's not a prerequisite to sort of disruption. And actually I was also surprised how, I guess, complacent insurers are still being. So a lot, there are a few who are doing a lot in this space, but most of them aren't really kind of taking up the idea of the first mover advantage. They're kind of sitting back and seeing what happens. So, but perhaps that's not that surprising given by nature insurers are risk averse. But I'd like to see them kind of taking the ball by the horns a bit more.
Another question. The London market is currently going through the central services refresh program and the studies there are involved. To what extent do you believe InsurTech will play a game in that reorganization? And do they have a say?
I think they will have, they could play a role, but I think, as you're saying, people are typically going for the easy entry kind of areas. So a few will probably notice that as an area that they can go after. And we are seeing some, just in general, some startups, like Cody Analytics, for example, their kind of target is kind of London markets insurers. So, but I don't think perhaps it's kind of mature enough yet. If you don't have that.
Any other final questions before the question? Adam? Yeah.
So once looked at UK market, so what's the most competitive advantage in UK?
Well, London is always has been the kind of hub of insurance, so I do think it has a natural competitive advantage just off the back of that. But it shouldn't. I don't think it should rest on its laurels from that perspective. So I think it does have its natural advantage, but a stumbling block are kind of lots of regulation. I know there's a lot of work going on. There's a special envoy in fintech where they're trying to remove barriers for startups so that they can continue to grow, because the government recognises the need to hold on to this. But it's whether kind of official bodies and things can kind of keep up with the pace and not impede it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. lot of benefits. This is a great overview of what's happening in all the specific fields that are happening. We're now going to go into a bit more specific, and I'm going to have to introduce our next speaker. What I'm understanding is that most people coming in from insurance startups either have no experience at all or they've been working in the industry for a long time. Our next speaker has been seeing both the experience of starting his own life insurance startup and running that, then going back to his former employer of Swiss Re, so having the experience of working both in the established player as well as in an upcoming disruptor. He gives an amazing perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Matthew. You can eat it actually. Can you hear without it?
Can you hear me okay? That's all right. Is that all right? Okay. So, morning everyone. When someone comes to speak, usually they hope that everyone's had a good night's sleep and everyone's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I hope there are a few sore heads after yesterday's football match and that people were celebrating. Any Welsh friends? Okay, that's good. Okay. So Eric got in touch a few weeks ago and asked me to come and say a few words about, as he mentioned, what it's like to work on the inside of an insurance company, what it's like on the outside of an insurance company, and what I'm doing at the moment, which is somehow trying to bring the two together. My name is Matthew Jones. I work at a company called Swiss Re, and in particular a division called Life Capital. Life Capital is essentially a holding company for a group of life and health insurance companies based in the US and here in Europe. So, as I said, today I'll start by talking a little bit about the outside. And for those people in the room who are thinking about maybe going into InsurTech and doing something on your own, a few tips, lessons learned from my time outside. Then a few words on what it's like to deal with an insurance company and how you can make life a hell of a lot easier for yourselves and for us, and get what you're doing into our business and into production. And then I've got Q&A at the end, but do feel free to chat. I'm happy to address questions on the fly. So, as I said, I work at Swiss Re, a global reinsurer, just over 150 years old, so been around a little bit. Sometimes it feels like we've been around for 150 years. We have offices in just over 25 countries now, and last year wrote just over 30 billion in premiums. So reasonable size, which means we're able to experiment and do different things in different regions. My journey started a few years ago. I started in London working in business development reinsurance. And after a period of time, was persuaded to move to the head office to work on strategy and corporate development in Zurich. That's not me playing the alcohol, by the way. I worked across those two roles. I was there for just over 3 years or so. Started in property and casualty insurance, and then moved over into life and health insurance. And it was when I started working in life and health insurance that I realised what a huge opportunity there is. So, Cassie mentioned earlier on that there's been a lot in property and casualty so far, not that much in life and health. So there is a huge, I thought there was a huge opportunity, still think it's a huge opportunity if anyone wants to give it a go. And as a result of that, said to actually I want to try and do something on my own. So I left with my boss at the time to go and try something else. And as I mentioned, that was across the US and the UK. And then at the beginning of this year, was persuaded to come back into Swiss Re and now work in customer engagement, which is a nice way of saying innovation, anything that doesn't fall within BAU. So before I start talking about lessons learned and things like that, I thought just to preempt the questions, what was I doing? What was the business that I was working on? So it was called Parachute, and it was very simple. It was direct-to-consumer online life insurance in the US. So anyone who's ever dealt with life insurance knows it's a real pain. It's incredibly complex. It takes, especially in the US, can take up to about 6 to 8 weeks. You have to pay for the privilege of being prodded with a needle if you're like, I cannot deal with needles. It's a really horrible process. It's a really horrible product to buy. Over 90%, usually, actually somewhere up to close to 95%, of all life insurance in the US is sold through an agent, face-to-face, around the kitchen table. They come around,
they'll keep talking to you until you buy something, and often you just buy something to get rid of them, just so you can go to bed. So in many, I exaggerate a little bit for effect, but in some cases it can be like that. So this is all the different rationale for why we thought, or why we think there's a huge opportunity and why I wanted to go and do something. So I'll come back at the end as to why it didn't work out. But in terms of thinking about lessons learned and from the outside, my first tip really is to choose your co-founders carefully. And many these lessons apply to many other industries, but it's worth reiterating as insurance is at the beginning, kind of the start of this evolution, revolution, depending on your perspective. Ask the other people that you're working with, why are you doing this? What are the motivations? Is it a lifestyle business? Are you doing this because you want to be, some $5 billion company? Something that sometimes people really laugh at is get personal. Have really personal conversations about life priorities. What's going on in their life over the next 12 months? Are they going to have a baby? Does their partner work in a company where they're going to be sent somewhere else in 6 or 12 months? So have those really personal conversations and really get to know your co-founders really well, and figure out what skills are missing in your team. So as you start to build up your original team, figure out what you need and where you're going to get it from. People do forget about that. And that leads very nicely on this important point, and I think goes back to Cassie's point around, well, actually it's pale, male, and stale. Sorry, guys. But actually, you really need insurance expertise when you're starting an InsurTech startup. Insurers want to have conversations about insurance with you. So at some point, they're going to ask you about, to a certain extent, actuarial tables, lapse rates. You'll need to be able to justify some of the things that you're talking about. There are ways in which you can get around this. So you don't necessarily need to have some guy of 20 years experience in your co-founding team. There are ways of getting around it. I'll come back to the advisor panel later on. But you need to be able to have those conversations, and usually across the value chain. So even if you're working just on distribution cannot be looked at on its own. Distribution involves underwriting, it involves claims, everything is brought together. And of all the VCs I've spoken to, and this goes to the guys in Shoreditch and King's Cross, it goes to the guys on Sandhill Road, they're all looking for this kind of expertise. They want to be able to see a team that crosses both tech and insurance. And on that point, on tech, funnily enough, it's really difficult sometimes to get tech people interested in insurance. I can't believe it. I mean, I love insurance, but some people don't. So you really do need to have just more than insurance expertise. Find and love your CTO. Cling on to them. Do not let them go. My favorite quote from a VC, and this was a guy based in San Francisco, said in a very blunt manner, I want someone to look me in the eye and tell me they're going to build this, and I want to believe them. So you can't just rely on, your friend down the road who's done a bit of web design here and there. You've got to have someone with the right skills and who can really convince someone that they can build this for you. One of the things that we definitely did right was engaging with potential investors very early. So we engaged with B round investors, A round investors, seed investors right at the beginning. And one of the benefits of that is it enables you to build your roadmap. You know what you need to do to hit your seed round. You know what you need to do to hit A and B. And unlike fintech, maybe not so much unlike fintech, but unlike other industries where you can build something and you can start selling immediately, insurance isn't like that. You can't just start selling a policy tomorrow. No, you just can't. And that's not because it's particularly complicated. You have to have something very specialist regulated. You can't just start selling. So they will give you an idea, and sometimes they'll be helpful, sometimes they won't. But be straight, ask them what they're looking for. And the other thing that's really helpful is Crunchbase has a really great database of companies and investors. So investors that are invested in InsurTech companies. So have a look at those. Avoid the need to educate your potential investors in insurance. I've sat in several conversations where you're half an hour in, and you realise that they're asking lots of very interesting questions, but you've, over the last 20 minutes, gradually moved away from the point of your business and what you really want to talk about, and you're kind of passing on lots of information. That's great. You make friends, but it doesn't necessarily help you with your business. But equally, and this is something I'm seeing a little bit more and more, companies will, I'll speak to founders and they'll say, well, we don't really need the money. I understand that. But be brave enough to raise and to get that external validation. Don't underestimate the power of being able to point to an investor that you've convinced and brought on board. Especially when you're dealing with insurance companies, we're looking for things like that. We're looking into, have you already convinced either an insurance company or a prominent insurance professional or something like that? So it's something else to not be afraid of. And going back to the point I made earlier on about your roadmap for proof points, think about how you're going to build out your proof points in a regulated industry. And don't just come up with something and think that's great. You've got to really be able to justify it. Be clear and realistic. If you're not going to be an insurance company, Lemonade is the exception. They are filing to be an insurance carrier. But if you're not going to be an insurance company, you need to find one. You need to use their risk-bearing capabilities. If that's the case, how are you going to find one? Do you have a couple of angels, not in the investor sense, but do you have a couple of people that are going to be able to facilitate those introductions? If not, you need to think about how you're going to do that. But also think about what kind of company you want to engage with. Some of the large companies have got very complex approval processes. They tend to move quite slowly. The smallest ones don't tend to have the spare resources. So maybe the ones in the middle are actually the sweet spot for what you want to achieve. And as I mentioned earlier on, you can't just start selling insurance. So how are you going to improve your ability to acquire customers, which is one of the biggest challenges that we see, and one of the main things that actually I struggle with when I speak to founders now. So one of the worst things I see in pitches, and I see this quite often, is we're going to go viral, and that's how we're going to acquire customers. Guys, you're not. Most likely you're not. I'd love to think you can. Maybe Eric's got some tips on how they should shoot their video, but it's unlikely. So you really need to think through how you're going to do it, and be realistic. Actually, it costs quite a lot to acquire an insurance customer. Pick your location carefully. So don't underestimate the benefits of having an ecosystem around you. We're very fortunate here in the UK to have London. There's a lot going on in London at the moment. There's a lot going on in Lloyd's. There's a lot going on outside Lloyd's, both in property, casualty, specialty, and life and health. So we really do cover everything. The US actually is a little bit unfortunate in that they really do have a split, East and West Coast, so it can be a bit difficult. We're quite fortunate to have one focal point for the whole country, arguably for the whole continent, although we'll see what happens next Thursday. Think about how you can get your team together. So one company I spoke to recently, they've got one founder over in Asia, they've got one founder on an island in Europe, they've got one guy in London, another one in Edinburgh, and you speak to them, how on earth are you going to have team meetings? Conference calls are all very well, but are you going to be able to look people in the eye and have really difficult conversations about how you want to build this business? So think about how you're going to get your team together and where actually is affordable. And if you are needing to target insurance companies, B2B sense, where are they? Are they all based in London, or are they based outside of London and some other spots? And for those people thinking about going to the US, think about visa problems. It's very difficult, or can be very difficult, unless you raise significant money, if you're not American. And then I think this is one of the last points around building panel advisors. So, okay, you don't necessarily need to have a guy with 20 years expertise on your co-founder team, but maybe you can make up for it with your panel advisors. So there are plenty of people out there in insurance that are prepared to give up their time and energy and effort and use their network to help you build up your startup. One tip that I give to founders, which not every advisor agrees with, is don't give anything up to them until you really are convinced of the value of their bringing. It's very tempting to bring an advisor on, give them a percent of your company, and expect that they're going to go hell for leather and help you build up the company. The best advisors are the ones that really believe in your company and are going to help you regardless. They'll spend 6 months working with you, refining some of your plans, providing you with some advice, giving you help, meeting people. At that point, you're convinced of their value. Then bring them on board. Then start discussions around what part of the company you want to give them. But don't rush in and start handing over equity, because you will regret it later on. There's a very good friend of mine based over in the US. He gave something like 2% to an advisor right at the beginning. And over the first few weeks, he was really, really on board, making introductions and everything. And then 3-4 months later, it just went quiet. And the guy's moved on to other things. He's working on other projects, and it's incredibly frustrating for the founder, who's now given away this part of the company and needs this help to take the company to the next stage. But essentially, the equity is there. It's not working. It's not doing anything. So just think about it before you do that. And maybe there are some people that you do just want to. You want them committed and you have to do something, but that's my advice in general. And then on the advisors, strive for a blend. So startup experience, insurance experience, technology experience, and scaling. So don't underestimate the difficulties in getting your business from this to this. You might think that it's relatively straightforward, but actually sometimes it's not so. So that's experience from the outside. Now on the inside. So I tend to receive 1 or 2 different pitches a week from companies that are interested in either working with Swiss Re or want to just understand a little bit more about how they might get their startup off the ground. And this is, actually, I'd love to take credit for this. I found this a few weeks ago. It was written by a guy based over in Singapore. It was a LinkedIn post. And I thought it really summed up everything that I've been thinking about over the last few months. He did a far better job than I ever would. And he summarizes this, it's on the topic of how you should engage with this. He summarizes it into 4 points. Pilots, benefits, ask, and collaborate. So on the subject of pilots, as mentioned earlier on, insurance is all about risk management. If you go in and you say you've got this great idea and you want to take it straight into production, you're going to give people heart attacks. The insurers generally do prefer to pilot new technologies before they actually go live with them, even if you have got your solution in production with another insurance company. That doesn't really mean anything to them. You've got different systems, you've got different approaches, culture, everything. So if you do propose a pilot, it de-risks your ask and it'll earn you brownie points. And it'll start to establish the credibility you need for that longer-term partnership. And don't forget to cost it and be realistic. So I'll come back to the costing points later on. Focus on benefits, not features. So we talked about blockchain earlier on. No one cares what your blockchain technology is doing, whether it's securing genome sequencing results. No one cares. Focus on what the benefits are for the insurance company. Okay, it's using blockchain. It's a nice buzzword. But what are the benefits of it? What is actually going to help? What about it is going to help the insurer? And typically that should be one of the following P's, and you should also make sure that you can measure these. So the first one is persistency. Make sure that your solution increases the number of customers that will renew their policy. These are customers that are going to stick around, not just for 12 months, but they're going to stay even beyond the claim. The next one is proximity. So insurance is typically low touch. You'll buy a policy, you might make a claim, more often than not, you'll go through to renewal and that's it. So think about, is your solution going to help increase the number of touch points with that customer? Profitability. Very simply, is it going to help the insurance company to make more money? Going with a definite ask. So I have had a number of meetings over the last few weeks or so where companies come in, have a nice conversation, and then you get to the end and you really thought about what they want. In some cases, they just want a conversation, and that's okay. But generally speaking, the people that work in insurance are busy people. They do work Saturdays and Sundays sometimes. So don't leave it to them to work out the details of how they can partner with you. If you think you've got a great solution, be clear about how you bring it about. Try to get transparency around the insurer's decision-making process. So don't be afraid to ask them, what is the process that you guys have to go through? Do you need 10 layers of sign-off, or do you need 1? Are you allowed to sign this off? If it's over 10 million, does it have to go to someone else? So it's okay to ask about that. And by going with a costed pilot, not that I should be helping on the other side, but it does help when it comes to negotiations. If you go in and you say, well, this is the price that we think we need to make this pilot a success, it's very difficult for an insurance company to then kind of go in and arrange the part. So it does help with the negotiation point as well. And then the final point is around collaboration. So find the right people. This can be hard. LinkedIn is incredibly useful. Everyone puts keywords on their profile now, so it's getting a little bit easier. You'll rarely find the right person first time. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Try not to reach out to multiple people in the same organization. Organizations are, or at least not at the same time. Give it a bit of time before you go again. Organizations tend to be a little bit smaller than you think. But it's true that each organization does have a handful of what I would call point people. So people that will just help you navigate the organization. They'll put you in touch with the right person. You know, they might see the first couple of slides that you've got and they'll go, okay, I realize you need to speak to this person or that person. So those people do exist and they will help you to figure out what your journey is in the company. And I think if you follow those kind of 4 principles, and I've seen a couple of cases where they've actually followed these and almost accidentally, it makes life a hell of a lot easier. And you do as an InsurTech startup, you can get your solution into the company and start scaling and growing and making some money. So, very brief overview of the outside, the inside, and like I said, back again. Hopefully that was very interesting for those guys that are thinking about going into InsurTech startup entrepreneurship. Second question. Yeah.
Just a quick insight about how technology, even in insurance company, was 2 hours technology consultant and worked for like 6-7 years in emerging markets. So leave about the companies who are coming from outside, even from inside. So we were like building for Zurich or Prudential or MetLife, and if we bring in some product for them, and if any of those products changes some feature which your agents or brokers or inside policy servicing is using, they will not use it, no matter how good it is. So they want the similar process to be always followed here. So even the company is building technology inside the company, and they are paying in the billions, but still they are not taking it up to. I mean, I assume if some company is coming from outside and change the behavior in which they are engaging with the product, they will never use it. So that's a completely challenging for us also, for giving some solution to the companies and even some features which is redundant now, they don't need it, but they still want it because they are habitual of using it again and again. So and there's always a conflict between the technology aspect of it and the agency aspect of it. As you said, 90% insurance is actually sell by the agency. So agency has a very strong power, so they can say the insurance company what exactly the customers need. So they have a very strong say in it. So if you change some agency kind of claim process or something which adds one step or something to your agency, or they have to go for the whole education of their agents, so they will never buy it. So they will know it's better than one which was before. So if some outside startup comes in to insurance and say that, okay, why don't you do it? It's not necessary, but they just can't do it because that's how they're following it over the years.
Yeah, so I think, so thank you for sharing that experience. So Life Capital as a business only owns direct consumer businesses. So we're in a rather fortunate position in that we don't have to go through that ongoing negotiation with agents. So if our business decides to make a change to how we sell and administer life insurance, or makes a change to a process, it's our decision to make. And we're the ones that are responsible for engaging with customers in advance to see if they will accept it, and so on. So I think actually it's that tension that will lead to additional change. It will drive further change in other industries. So the story you just mentioned, I've heard a similar version in the US. And I think at some point, customers will get so frustrated by a lack of change and a lack of development that's hindered by middlemen and intermediaries, that at some point, someone will be able to come along and will manage to put the pieces together that drives, that creates a modern solution. So I do recognise what you're saying, and I think you highlighted the fundamental differences between a direct business and an indirect business.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the decision you took to go back into Swiss Re from having been a startup.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So the reason ultimately that we stopped working on the startup was that my business partner was American, and she decided that after having worked on it for about 9 months, the startup lifestyle wasn't for her. She preferred a corporate environment, preferred something that was far more secure, kind of in Switzerland rather than over in the US. And so I went on this process of trying to identify a replacement for her. I still remember the last time I went to the US, got pulled aside by immigration, and they said, why do you keep coming here every few weeks? Well, just really like the country. So it became very difficult for me to identify someone who was American, who could immediately move over, start building the foundations of the business. So it wasn't an overnight decision. It was something that kind of happened over a few weeks. And over a few weeks, you sleep a few times, and you kind of think things through, and you see things from different angles. Throughout the whole period of being away, I kept in touch with Swiss Re. So left with best wishes and good luck, and let us know when we can help. And I kept in touch all the way through. And then when our boss previously found out that we'd sort of told him, so that we're not doing this anymore, his question was, so when are you coming back? I said, well, I wasn't planning to. And then behind the scenes, I've been in quite reorganisation. So we moved out this innovative part of the business to its own unit, away from the more traditional, slower side. So in the end, it was a very easy decision. And yeah, I mean, there was rightly some challenge from a former mentor who was still in Swiss Re and said, we went for breakfast and sat down, and he said, do you really want to do this? When you left, what were the other reasons why you left? We moved slowly. Decisions take a long time. More often than not, you can't make a decision on your own. You need to get a group of people on board. It's kind of part of being a Swiss company, consensus driven. And we worked through those. And I think, we could clearly see that there was at least some value that I could bring, however much we'll debate, but there was a little bit of value I could bring with a different perspective from being in that smaller environment, more agile environment. So yeah, that's, in the end, quite an easy decision.
I would like to hear about your internal work within Swiss Re. What I mean by that, when you have identified a portfolio of assets, technologies, insurance, whatever, how do you try to deploy them post-pilot within the business lines and the operations, whatever? And reversely, do you get, and that's really the interesting question for me on this part, do you get asks from people when asking you to find that piece that they would need?
So how do we take things from pilot to production? We will typically, in our team, take responsibility for the pilot, get the business comfortable with the pilot, and then the business typically takes over the pilot and takes it into production. So they will be the guys that are responsible for.
And the business would validate the pilot, so the idea, whatever.
We would do it jointly. So there would be an element, so we won't give them the responsibility themselves, just say yes or no, this doesn't work, because it can be too easy to say, no, it doesn't work, this is a distraction, it's going to take us too long. We will take a longer term look, we will take a different approach. So we will jointly identify whether it's something that's worth putting into production. Once we've got that sign off, and then we'll send that upwards to sign off, and then something that gets signed up there. That's what happens down here. Once that happens, then it goes into the typical planning process. That's when it tends to slow down a bit, because then you won't just put temporary agreements in place. You won't just put in place kind of quick fixes and patches. You'll actually do it properly. So then they typically assign have a business partner who will guide that startup through the process of going from pilot to production. On the subject of do we get the business asking us for help? Yes, we do. But only over the last 6 months or so, when they've realised actually we have these connections, we have this ability to do something, and people have realised that you don't have to run your business with paper. You can actually do something different, and it can be cheaper. So we have been fielding more requests recently. It is still more the other way. So we'll go to them and say, look, we met these guys. We think this is interesting. Would you like to see how it could work? But more and more, we're seeing requests coming the other way, which is really great. And it's a bit surprising. It's somewhat ahead of schedule. Yes, is what I would say.
You talk about I hear about cost. And the other city in the UK could be a very much better. The second question is about making more cost.
Sorry, it's about.
Second question is about making more cost.
Okay, so on the subject of location, so I recognise, so I pay rent in London, I recognise how expensive it is. And I honestly think it's getting to a point where if we don't do something about it, it can become quite difficult to remain a hub for startups. So in terms of alternatives, the main alternative, to be honest, still is San Francisco, but quite frankly, it's even more expensive than London, so it's not really a viable alternative. For those people that are really interested in doing something in insurance, I would recommend you look at something called the Global Insurance Accelerator, based over in Des Moines in Iowa, where costs are a fraction of what you see in London and San Francisco. I was fortunate enough to go over there and spend a couple of weeks there in the middle of last year or so. Great people, a developing ecosystem, but passionate about insurance. So I think that is becoming a viable alternative. Here in the UK, yeah, maybe Edinburgh. So Edinburgh's got quite a lot of insurance and banking experience up there. So that is definitely an alternative. But London still remains, I think, the leader.
The second one is about venture capitalists. You've been working in the US and the UK. You find there is different style of venture capitalists.
Yeah, so I'll never forget the one guy I met in San Francisco who sat opposite us at the table with his arms folded and stared at us for about half an hour while we just kind of delivered our kind of spiel about how great insurance is. And then we finished, and he just launched into this rant about accelerators and how they're largely lame and death spiral of lame. It was just the most surreal experience. It was pure Silicon Valley, right? So there are big differences between the UK and the US. I would have to say, I think the guys in the US take a very Silicon Valley approach. So they will want specific proof points. They want to see you to do X, Y, Z. They will apply the same standards to you as they did to Snapchat and Instagram, right? That can be quite difficult for insurance. The guys in the UK have a slightly more nuanced view of insurance. They understand it a little bit better. They are prepared to bend the rules a little bit, I think. Or rather, not their rules, but their way of assessing companies. I don't think one's better than the other, but they are quite different in terms of style, I would say. It depends. To be honest with you, it depends on the kind of partner you're looking for. If you are looking for someone that's going to give you a constant kick up the backside and the occasional kind of shouting, then the guys in the US are going to be great for you. If you want someone who's going to facilitate your introduction to people in the industry and perhaps help you with some of the finer detail, then it might be the guys in the UK. But I am, of course, generalizing that, so it really does depend. Yeah, so Life Capital is based only in the US and Europe. So I've had very, very little exposure to what's going on in Asia. I mean, I'd say the most that I can do at the moment is keeping in touch on Twitter. It seems as though there is a little bit more going on, certainly in the last few months, a bit more activity. Aviva MetLife have both got hubs over there. I think both of them are in Singapore, actually. I know there's a little bit emerging in Hong Kong from colleagues and friends over there. But I honestly don't know. I think it still lags behind some of what's going on in the US and Europe. Quite how long that will be, though, I'm not sure. It strikes me that at a high level, there's huge opportunity. A lot of it is still done. I mean, defer to the gentleman behind you, but strikes me that a lot of it is still manual, a lot of it is still done face to face. But equally, it's a very fragmented continent, right? And here, at least we have the EU one block regulation again now. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult, I think, maybe to do things at scale over there, unless you're going into China or Asia. But again, we defer to the experts.
I was reading the report published by Stephen.
Yep.
There's a ranking of 100 of the past generation verification tools in the world. The number one is the InsurTech company from China, working with the developer to provide online insurance.
Yep.
So I think that was good.
Any questions? Let's get a round of applause.
That is the question I get asked most. I'm very happy to mind it.
Yeah, that's true. But
I'm very loyal.
excellent. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the room are thinking about starting their own insurance or have started already? Quite a few. So. For you who just said that, what was the biggest takeaway from this in terms of what to do specifically? Roberto.
Keep working with specific
Advisors.
Advisors?
Usually, you find someone great, I find money.
Very good.
You say 5?
5.
Oh.
Actually, my father thinks it was a very interesting perspective of your experience in investors. We know what we do. Because we have most investors that are not comfortable with InsurTech investments because we don't have to know how the insurance board works.
I think, so I was just going to say, I think for the next maybe for the next couple of years, there is still going to be an element of, as a group, the insurers, entrepreneurs such as yourself, we're all going to be helping out and bringing the VC sector up to speed. Because we need more VCs interested in the space to be able to fund the entrepreneurs of the future. But at some point, they'll get up to speed and we'll be able to get on with building businesses.
My observation is the team pieces, I think that's really interesting to you saying that. And also thank you for sharing about your experience with your founder and the fact that it didn't work out. I think that's really important to understand the dynamics of the team. And I look forward to kind of understanding some of the more road bumps that you had along the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's something that's where startups in the room might sort of benefit from talking to each other about what road bumps are we experiencing. And in particular, focusing on VCs and the education of the VCs. Because a lot of them are saying they're really interested in investing.
Absolutely.
But it kind of sounds to me like fluff at the moment.
I think a big challenge is, so I would, by and large, I would agree. I think the big challenge for the VCs at the moment is that they have exceptionally high standards. And at the moment, within insurance, we're just scratching the surface. And I think they are biding their time a little bit and waiting for, I mean, again, I exaggerate it a little bit, but they're waiting for a Zuckerberg to come in, or something, not him, but someone of that kind of nature that just that they believe is going to change everything, and they'll put all their chips down there. So it is difficult.
The question is how to know this.
Well, if I knew, if I knew that, I'd also ask the next week's boss members. Yeah. If I
I could just add a little point from the perspective of VC, we definitely don't all understand insurance or understand stuff. We took wider payments or wider fintech, we might not know what payments. So for us specifically at Digital Space Ventures, we're highly focused on payments and remittance because it's a space we absolutely understand. But that doesn't mean that we're not interested or not keen to learn about specific things in the InsurTech space or the wider insurance market, how it can be disrupted by the startups that are showing up, by the people in this room. Where was I going with this? Basically, it's just because maybe someone doesn't understand certain topics within insurance, or more specifically that certain startup might be looking at the same, doesn't mean that they are not someone who you should take money from. Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of value that VCs can provide that's sort of beyond or surpasses really the necessity to kind of know certain specifics about the insurance business.
I think just to add to that point, there is a blog post by Matthew Wonger of CB Insights, where it's kind of a summary post, and it's about 10 articles or so of high-level perspectives on insurance and InsurTech. And I think that it goes to show actually, yeah, that there are a lot of VCs out there that have high-level understanding of that, and no reason why you can take money from them for sure.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Ask myself, Dan, or Terry. Pretty good.